The time of the Jedi has passed. They cannot defeat Sidious. But together, you and I can.
This is a pretty bold claim made by Darth Maul, and I'm sure many longtime fans probably chuckled at the thought of Darth Maul and Ahsoka defeating Darth Sidious and Darth Vader. I mean, these are two of the most powerful Sith to ever exist, but I don't think it's quite as crazy as most people. In fact, I think it could be entirely possible. Maul even makes the claim again toward the end of his duel with Ahsoka. This could be him trying to lure Ahsoka to the dark side, but I believe there is some truth behind his words. So let's take a look at the evidence and see if this is the ravings of a mad Sith or something Maul truly believes. First, let's address the elephant in the room: Darth Maul's duel with his former master on Mandalore at the end of Season 6. Most people I've spoken to about this consider it completely one-sided in Sidious's favor, who was fighting the Sith brothers 1 versus 2, but I see it differently. First, let's take a look at the combatants. Sidious is pretty simple, one of the most powerful Force users of all time who could call on all the dark power of the Force and bend it to his will. Blindingly fast, he was able to blitz and kill multiple Jedi Masters, handpicked by Mace Windu to arrest Sidious. Then we have Savage Opress, who is so powerful that his strikes can send Count Dooku flying. He can tank dozens of blaster bolts, which kill the strongest Jedi throughout the galaxy during Order 66, and he is someone who can fight Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker simultaneously for an extended period of time, and even knock them both clean over with an AoE force push. And of course, Darth Maul, who is far more skilled and powerful than his brother. When Savage starts acting up, Maul puts him in his place in seconds, showing who is the master and who is the apprentice. Darth Maul has decades of fighting experience. He was taken by Sidious as a child, and he was one of the most highly trained Sith in the history of the Order. Using the Juyo form, he's aggressive and entirely unpredictable to most opponents. Even before Episode 1, he killed a Jedi Padawan who was about to be promoted to Jedi Knight. And during Episode 1, he defeated a Jedi Master, that being Qui-Gon Jinn. Most people hold this quote-unquote loss to Obi-Wan against Darth Maul, but I certainly don't. Let's take a closer look at the fight from the perspective of Obi-Wan to determine if it really is an anti-feat for Darth Maul. When the fight first began, Obi-Wan couldn't believe the grace and power of Darth Maul, so I'm going to throw some quotes at you from the novelization of The Phantom Menace. So this is a Sith Lord. Obi-Wan fought fleetingly as he dodged and leaped. It was taking every skill he knew just to stay alive. Slowly, the Sith Lord forced Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan back. The Sith Lord's moves are incredible. He is fighting the two Jedi at once, flipping into the air, outmaneuvering them at every turn. Together, they were able to hold their own against the Sith Lord, but their efforts at attack, at assuming the offensive against this dangerous adversary, were woefully inadequate. Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan were barely in the same league as Maul when fighting 2 against 1, and after defeating Qui-Gon, Maul continued to dominate despite the fact that Obi-Wan had become even more determined. Another couple of quotes from the book: "The battle wore on, and for a time it was fought evenly. But Darth Maul was the stronger of the two, and was driven by a frenzy that surpassed even the frantic determination that fueled Obi-Wan. Maul had been more than the equal of the Jedi he had faced, and should have been able to defeat them easily. It was bad luck and chance that had led to his death, a combination that even the power of the dark side could not always overcome." So, as far as we see in the film, and as is explained in more detail within the novelization, Maul was far above the combined power of Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan, and lost due to his own arrogance and literally dumb luck. Now, you may be thinking, well, Obi-Wan was just a Padawan at the time, but immediately after this, he was promoted to Jedi Knight. He was ready for the trials before he ever fought Darth Maul. Fast forward to the Clone Wars. Maul meets Obi-Wan multiple times, but each time he's holding back. He doesn't want Obi-Wan to die, he wants him to suffer, so taking him alive is his entire goal. Obi-Wan admits himself that he and Asajj are outmatched in their duel with the brothers. And when Obi-Wan was fighting against Darth Maul and his brother a bit later, Obi-Wan targets Savage, the weaker of the two, and when Savage is hurt, Maul ends the duel immediately. Finally, they meet again on Mandalore, where Maul decides not to duel Obi-Wan because, well, he's already won. Now that we've taken a bit of a closer look at Darth Maul and given him some scaling, putting his brother Savage relative to Obi-Wan and Anakin, and putting Maul above that, we have the duel with Sidious. Savage is simply out of his depth here. He's a non-factor. During the duel, Maul is able to keep Sidious's full attention, which allows Savage to get one hit in. And after dueling the brothers even further, he becomes exasperated and decides to remove Savage from the picture. After this, Maul pulls two sabers out, and the two duel evenly. Maul tags Sidious with a kick, and Sidious tags Maul back. The two go blow for blow until they're locked in a lightsaber struggle, which Sidious eventually wins. He just overpowers Maul. While I admit Sidious is much more powerful than Darth Maul in the Force, their dueling ability is relative, in my opinion. As stated in the StarWars.com databank, Maul attempts to avenge his brother's death, but simply cannot defeat Sidious's power. In Everything You Need to Know About Star Wars book, it's stated that Maul is the third best red lightsaber wielder, just below Sidious at number 2, and just above Dooku at number 4. Sidious came to fight the brothers because they were becoming a real threat that he had to deal with himself. Otherwise, he would have just sent Dooku, as he had done throughout the entire Clone War. It's clear Sidious considered Maul much more than a match for Dooku, which he confirms to Vader years later. He states, "Darth Maul was a true loss, while Dooku served his purpose and was disposed of." As Maul grows older, he becomes even more powerful. Dave Filoni states, "Maul is a super dangerous threat because he has been trained for years. He's really adept, so he's kind of in the Vader realm. He's well trained by Sidious in all types of Sith ways." This puts Maul directly in the same space as Vader's power and ability. This statement is supported by his showing against Ahsoka in Rebels, where Maul is the one doing most of the work against the Inquisitors, and during his duel with Ahsoka, he turns his back on her, not worried about a potential attack. Additionally, StarWars.com sheds some more light on the difference between the two. Quote, "Kanan agrees to split the group up, the logical choice pairing Maul with the weakest of the Jedi," unquote, showing us that Maul was considered the strongest of the group, which included Ahsoka. So just to summarize what we have up to this point, we have Darth Maul relative to Sidious in dueling ability, and we have Darth Maul also relative to Vader in terms of power and dueling ability as well. So now let's talk about Ahsoka. Of course, we see Ahsoka's battle prowess as she duels Darth Maul, who is attempting to lure her to the dark side. She's able to keep up with him for the most part, despite being disarmed and overpowered at multiple points, and then she ends up winning in the end. Ahsoka is one of the most skilled characters in the Star Wars universe, and it's no wonder why. She's received training from Anakin Skywalker, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and even Master Yoda taught her how to use her second lightsaber properly. And her most impressive feats occur during the Star Wars Rebels series, where she briefly duels against Darth Maul, she embarrasses multiple Inquisitors, and faces off against Darth Vader himself, dueling him for an extended period of time, showing off her immense skill. While Vader ended up winning the duel, Ahsoka was certainly on his level of skill. Some claim that Vader was holding back in this fight, trying to lure Ahsoka to the dark side, but this is simply untrue. Dave Filoni himself makes the statement that Vader is trying to kill Ahsoka, and his claims that Sidious would show her mercy were simply lies. So both characters were fighting for their lives in this duel. Despite ultimately losing to Vader, the greatest Sith duelist, mind you, the showrunners of Rebels had this to say about Ahsoka. Quote, "We all felt that Ahsoka, the only person that could really match her in this time period, blow for blow, would be Vader or the Emperor," unquote. So here we are, with Maul relative to Sidious during the Clone War, but becoming more and more powerful as the years wore on, and Ahsoka, who is relative to Vader, the greatest duelist in the dark side of the Force. But being relative isn't the same thing as defeating, and that's the whole point of this video. Could these characters defeat Sidious and Vader? I don't think there's any scenario where Maul and Ahsoka are able to defeat Anakin and Sidious in the immediate future. And I think that Ahsoka kind of alluded to that Maul wasn't really on Anakin's level, at least not yet. So I believe if she were to turn, she would convince Maul that it wasn't a wise decision to go after them immediately. I think taking some time to train, become more powerful would be the smarter thing. So in this what if scenario, I think that's the most logical choice, and I think that that's what they would ultimately do. We already know that Sidious is more powerful than Maul, so despite them being equal in skill, the difference in force ability would be too vast to overcome. But remember, in this scenario, Ahsoka would have learned from Maul himself, someone she was able to duel with somewhat evenly as a Padawan. Remember, Maul was one of the most extensively trained Sith in the history of the Order, and he was trained directly by Sidious for years. While Anakin was a great teacher, his knowledge of the Force was nowhere near Sidious's. If Ahsoka joined Maul, then there's almost no doubt she would have ended up much more powerful than what we see in Rebels. After all, she had to forge her own path, train alone, study alone, with no guidance. Additionally, Maul was resigned to the same fate. No peers to train with, no one to pass his knowledge on to. He lived most of his life after the Clone Wars alone. Together, the two would have been able to train. They would have been able to impart wisdom and knowledge onto each other. And Ahsoka would have become far stronger, and Darth Maul would have become far stronger for it. I'm not saying that Maul and Ahsoka would for sure defeat Sidious and Vader, but I think I've made a solid case that it isn't as crazy as you might think. So what do you guys think? Is this possible, or is Maul just a crazy person? Let me know what you think down in the comments. Try to check your bias at the door. I want to think about this as objectively as we possibly can, and remember to be civil. Also, remember to like and subscribe. It does really help us out. And if you want to support the channel directly, you can consider becoming a member. But that's all I've got for you guys today. Remember the motto. It's Darth Maul and Ahsoka versus Sidious and Vader over everything. And I'll see you guys next time.